Well, here's a car we haven't seen properly in Ireland for quite some time, and actually we won't get to see this one properly, really, for another year yet, but this is the new Jeep Grand Cherokee, and it is coming only as a plug-in hybrid. This is the 4xe version, or 4xe if you want to be a bit more like that. Sorry about the sunglasses, by the way, it's really bright today, and I can't stare at the camera and, and not go blind. It is a completely new car, new platform, new body, new interior, four-cylinder turbo engine, a 17 kilowatt hour battery, quite a disappointing electric only range compared to the Range Rover Sport particularly, which is the most direct rival to this car, which will do more than 100 kilometers on a full charge of its battery. This will probably only do about 40 or so on the WLTP cycle. So that's not great, but Jeep is playing up its genuine ruggedness. We are here in the wilds of southern Spain. We're about to go off-roading to really put this thing to the test. We've just driven a rather nice twisty turny mountain route, and it is a really lovely thing to drive. It's very stable, very sure-footed, it's got lovely steering, it's got a really beautiful interior too, which we'll talk about a bit more later on. It's not going to be cheap. Jeep Ireland hasn't set a price for it yet, but it's probably going to be north of €100,000. You are not going to see many of these on the road. You might say that's possibly just as well, given the size, the weight, the height, the bulk, and the fuel economy. Nonetheless, it's hard not to like a big Jeep because these are proper 4x4s. This is not just an SUV. This is a car with serious all-round capability, if that's something you would ever actually use. Doubtful that many owners, certainly on this side of the Atlantic, would ever put it to serious use. I think one of the places where this new Grand Cherokee really scores very highly is here on the inside. Now, old Grand Cherokees tended to have quite cheap and nasty interiors. This does not. Now, bear in mind this is an absolutely top spec Summit model, so this is going to be staggeringly expensive. But what we've got here, I think, is a cabin that's actually slightly nicer than what you get in the new Range Rover. There are still a few cheap old buttons, like some of the steering wheel buttons and some of the stuff down here, but the rest of it looks and feels superb. You've got these lovely diamond quilted high back leather seats. They're more like armchairs. This is real open pore wood on the steering wheel and here on the dashboard. And you've actually got three big screens. You've got a big screen here for your instruments, another one here for the Uconnect infotainment system in the center of the dash, and another one over here. It's optional in front of the passenger, which allows them to read the sat nav or mess around with some of the settings. I mean, it's a bit pointless, but it does look quite impressive. So does all the leather. Again, nicely stitched. More wood here on the doors. Steering wheel looks and feels really good to hold. The sat nav is a bit fiddly, we found today. It's not the most reliable, not the most accurate, I don't think, but you do get a lot of connections. You don't just get two USB connectors down here, you get four. Two of the older type and two of the newer USB-C type, and a HDMI socket, and a 12-volt connector, and even an aux in if you're still using an old iPod. That's great. You've got a big switch here for controlling your select track system, which allows you to pick between rock, sand and mud, snow, auto and sport driving modes. You've got another switch here which controls the height of the air suspension. Air suspension comes as standard. You've got a big storage box here under the armrest, a decent glove box over there. You've got loads of room in the back, loads of comfort, stretching out space. Again, it looks and feels like a really high quality piece. This Jeep is going to be very expensive, but once you sit in here, to be honest, it starts to feel worth it. I think my only quibble really is that the graphics on the instrument display look a little bit old-fashioned and cheap. That could do with a bit of a zhuzh up, I think. But for the most part, it's really lovely. There's a very good Macintosh sound system too, with big tweeters logoed with the Macintosh label. If you haven't heard of Macintosh, they make kind of, I suppose, hipster stereos with old-fashioned valves and things. They're very, very high-end, and that's who Jeep has partnered with for the sound system in here. There's a big sunroof that opens up. You've got a digital rear-view mirror as well. I mean, it's comprehensive, I have to say that. And on the drive up here, it's been really, really good to drive. It's been secure and steady, and yet on the tight, twisty bits, you put it in sport mode, you can really chuck it around. We've kind of been driving half in battery saving mode and half in hybrid mode, and we've averaged just over 8 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not the best, but equally, given the driving we've been doing, not the worst either. So now it's time to do some off-roading. Let's go and see what this big luxury SUV is really capable of. Well, we're just back from doing some off-roading with the Grand Cherokee, and I mean, not surprisingly, it has way more capability than any owner will ever reasonably use. I mean, it's just kind of stupidly good. It's not quite as all-round capable as a Range Rover. For instance, the wading depth, something that we clearly can't test on a day like today, is only 600 millimeters compared to the 900 millimeters that you get from Land Rover products. But nonetheless, I mean, the combination of air suspension, the switchable four-wheel drive, the limited slip differential in the back, the electric drive as well. We've done the entire off-road section on pure electric power, so it's maybe not quite the planet crusher that it otherwise might be. Um, it's just really, really impressive. There is something fundamentally stupid about buying a car like this if you're not going to make use of that kind of ability. It's like having a diving watch that'll go to 300 meters underwater and then just taking it down the local swimming pool. And that's really what most people do with cars like this. They buy cars that are staggeringly over-engineered for traveling off into the wilds and the outback, and then they drive them into town and back and go shopping with them. And that's just kind of daft. So yeah, don't buy this car. Don't buy a Grand Cherokee if you don't want to drive it off-road, really, is the message, I think, because you're really missing out on some staggering capabilities and the ability to bring you to beautiful places and spaces like this. It's really quite something. I mean, it is going to be a really expensive car. You're not going to see very many of these on the roads anytime soon. It doesn't arrive until 2024 for us. It will be a 100 grand car. But I have to say, kind of fallen for it. It's I shouldn't have, because it is a big, heavy, wasteful SUV, but it's so good looking. It's so lovely in here. It's so nice to drive. And at least it does sort of start Jeep moving in that direction of having electric power, even if it isn't fully electric and even if it is only really partially electric. It's a bit of an impressive all-rounder, I have to say. And it certainly bodes well for the likes of the fully electric Wagoneer S and Recon that are on the way. Yeah, I've not for the first time in my life, I think I've fallen for a Jeep.